The rain came down in sheets that night, hammering against the cracked windows of the police station, where the fluorescent lights flickered like they were tired of working. In the middle of the storm stood Alisha, a black woman with fierce eyes and a backbone carved from years of struggle. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this. Not standing in front of a desk with two officers staring at her like she was dirt stuck to their boots. "State your name," one of them barked, his voice sharp and bored at the same time. Alisha lifted her chin, refusing to let her voice shake. "Alisha Carter." The officer smirked, leaned back in his chair, and clicked his pen lazily. "Carter, huh? You're the one who filed that complaint last week, aren't you?" The other officer chuckled. "Oh, so she's the troublemaker. Great." The word stung, but Alisha had dealt with worse. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to demand justice, for herself, for her son, for the community that had been silenced too many times. But before she could even speak, the taller cop stood and slammed his palm against the counter, leaning in so close she could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "Listen here, lady. People like you don't come here making demands. You understand me?" The rain outside roared, almost drowning out her heartbeat, but Alisha didn't flinch. "People like me?" she repeated, her voice cutting through the tension. "You mean people who aren't afraid of you?" His jaw tightened. For a split second, his eyes darkened, and then, without warning, his hand came down across her face with a sickening slap. The sound echoed through the room, louder than the thunder outside. Alisha stumbled back, her cheek burning, but her pride remained unbroken. She caught her balance, straightened her coat, and stared him dead in the eye. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," she whispered. The smirk on his face faded. Something in her tone, in the way she said it, not like a threat, but like a promise, unsettled him. But the other officer laughed. "Sit down before we make it worse for you." Alisha refused. She wasn't here to be silenced. She wasn't here to back down. And even though her cheeks stung with every heartbeat, she knew the night was just beginning. Because what they didn't know, what no one in this room knew, was that Alisha wasn't alone in this fight. She had allies they couldn't imagine, people who moved in shadows, people with power, people who had been waiting for a reason to strike back. And this slap? This was the spark. But for now, she played it cool. She took a slow breath, gathered her courage, and leaned forward. "You're going to regret this," she said softly. "Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon." The taller cop narrowed his eyes. He was used to people cowering, begging, apologizing. But Alicia's calmness unsettled him more than her anger ever could. Still, he shoved her toward the holding cell. "We'll see about that." The metal door slammed shut behind her, echoing like a warning. Alisha sat on the cold bench, the sting on her cheek still hot, but her mind sharper than ever. She replayed every second, every word, every movement. She wasn't broken. She was calculating. Because somewhere in this storm, there was a way out. And when she found it, she wouldn't just walk free. She'd expose them, ruin them, bring their whole rotten system crashing down. And she knew exactly where to start. She wasn't just a victim. She was the beginning of something much bigger. As the rain outside grew heavier, a figure in a hood watched from across the street, eyes locked on the police station window where Alisha sat inside. The storm wasn't just weather. It was a warning. And the real story was about to begin. The audience is left wondering, who is the hooded figure watching Alisha from outside? Is he friend or foe? And what hidden plan does Alisha already have in motion? The rain didn't let up. It hammered the city like it wanted to wash it away. Inside that dingy police station, Alisha sat in the cold cell, her hands clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. She could still feel the sting on her cheek from the officer's slap, but her mind wasn't on the pain. No, her mind was on strategy. She replayed the officer's face in her head. His smirk. His arrogance. The way he thought he could get away with anything. Men like him built their power on silence. They counted on people being too scared to fight back. But what he didn't know was that Alisha had been preparing for this moment her entire life. The officer who slapped her paced down the hallway, stopping now and then to glance into her cell. He thought he had broken her. But every time their eyes met, she gave him the same calm stare. No fear. No submission. Just quiet defiance. And that unnerved him. Across the street, the hooded figure remained in the shadows. He watched the station, barely moving, the glow of a cigarette faintly lighting his face now and then. He wasn't just curious, he was waiting. Watching. Timing. Hours passed, the storm outside growing louder, angrier, like the city itself was restless. Then, without warning, the power flickered. The station's lights buzzed, sputtered, and went out. For a moment, the building plunged into darkness. Alisha's breath caught. She knew this wasn't a coincidence. The emergency lights hummed to life, bathing the station in a dull red glow. The officers cursed under their breath, fumbling with flashlights and radios. And then she heard it. A loud thud from outside. Another. Then glass shattering. Alisha rushed to the bars of her cell, straining to see. The hooded figure had disappeared from across the street. The storm howled louder, drowning out the chaos, but her instincts told her something was happening. The officer who slapped her ran toward the sound, barking orders at the others. His voice cracked slightly, though he tried to hide it. And in that moment, Alisha smiled. Because she realized she wasn't alone. Someone out there was moving. Someone out there wanted the same thing she did. Minutes later, the officer returned, breathing hard, his face pale. He unlocked her cell, grabbed her by the arm, and hissed, "You're coming with me." Alisha didn't resist. Not yet. He dragged her down a narrow corridor, past the buzzing emergency lights, past doors she had never noticed before. Finally, he shoved her into a small interrogation room. The walls were bare. A single table sat in the middle. He slammed the door shut behind them, his eyes darting nervously. "You think you're clever," he muttered, pacing the room. "You think you can walk in here and start trouble? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Alisha leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp. "No, it's you who doesn't know who you're dealing with." He froze, his eyes narrowing. Before he could respond, the lights flickered again, this time longer. The room went dark. Completely dark. And then, a voice echoed from the corner. "She told you. You should have listened." The officer spun around, fumbling for his gun. But the voice was calm, steady, and terrifyingly close. Alicia's heart raced, but not from fear. From recognition. Because she knew that voice. And she knew, the real Storm had just stepped inside. Who is the mysterious voice in the interrogation room? Is it the hooded figure from outside? Or someone even closer to Alisha than anyone realizes? The darkness stretched out forever in that tiny interrogation room. Alicia's breath came slow, steady, but her pulse thundered in her ears. The officer, frantic, yanked his gun from its holster and waved it blindly. His flashlight slipped from his belt and clattered onto the floor, rolling away, its weak beam cutting jagged patterns across the walls. "Who's there?" the officer barked, his voice cracking. "Show yourself." That calm, steady voice returned, low enough to send shivers down both their spines. "You made one mistake. You thought no one was watching." The officer spun in circles, his finger trembling on the trigger. "Come out, damn you." But Alisha didn't move. She knew better. She closed her eyes, listening, piecing the puzzle together. She'd heard that tone before, not in this room, not tonight, but years ago. Someone she thought was gone forever. The silence broke with a metallic screech. The lock on the door twisted. Slowly, painfully slow, the officer lunged at the handle, pressing his weight against the door. "You're not coming in here." But the door wasn't being pushed in. It was being pulled open from within. That's when the realization hit Alisha like a bolt of lightning. They were never alone in the first place. The officer stumbled back, his gun still raised. The flashlight beam caught a figure moving in the far corner of the room. Cloaked in shadow, tall, unmoving. "Back off," the officer shouted. "Back off, or I swear." The figure stepped forward, just enough for the light to catch a sliver of his face. The hooded man from outside. His eyes gleamed like cold steel. "You lay a hand on her again," he said, voice sharp as glass. "And it'll be the last thing you ever do." Alicia's stomach knotted. Relief mixed with confusion. Why was this stranger defending her? Why risk everything for someone he didn't know? The officer steadied his aim. His hand trembled, sweat dripping down his temple. "You don't know who you're messing with. I'll put you down right here." The hooded man didn't flinch. Didn't blink. He just tilted his head, studying the officer like he was already defeated. Alisha seized her moment. She slammed both palms on the metal table, making the officer flinch just long enough for the hooded man to move. In a blur, he was across the room. The gun went off, deafening inside the small space. The bullet slammed into the wall, inches from Alicia's head. And then the officer was on the floor. Disarmed. Breathing hard. The hooded man pressed a boot onto the officer's chest, the gun now in his own hand. "You abused your badge. You thought you had power. But tonight? Tonight, your power ends." The officer's face twisted with rage and fear. You don't know who protects me. You don't know how deep this goes." Alisha leaned forward, her voice steady, her eyes locked on the man who had humiliated her. "Then tell us. Tell us everything. Because you're not walking out of here until you do. For the first time all night, the officer broke. His bravado cracked, his jaw clenched, and his silence spoke louder than his words. The hooded man glanced at Alisha. He won't talk now. But trust me, he will. The storm outside howled louder, the wind slamming against the station windows like fists. The whole building seemed to rattle, as if the city itself demanded justice. The officer spat blood onto the floor, a twisted smile forming on his lips. You think you've won? You've just opened a door you'll never be able to close. And before Alisha could press further, before she could demand answers, an explosion rocked the station. The walls shook. The lights blew out. The entire building plunged into chaos. The hooded man spun toward the door, gun raised. Alisha covered her head as debris rained down. And over the roar of the destruction, a single thought cut through her mind like a knife. This wasn't about a slap anymore. This was war. Who set off the explosion, and why now? Is it to silence the officer, or to stop Alisha and her mysterious ally from uncovering something much bigger? The air filled with smoke and dust as the explosion's echo rattled every bone in Alisha's body. She coughed, waving the haze from her face, her ears ringing so loud it felt like silence had been shattered forever. The officer scrambled like a cornered animal, crawling toward the shattered doorway, his arrogance burned away by fear. The hooded man, quick as lightning, grabbed him by the collar and yanked him back into the room. Not so fast, the stranger growled. We're not done. Alisha staggered to her feet, her legs trembling. The blast hadn't come from inside the room. It came from outside the station, which meant someone wanted this place destroyed, right here, right now. She shouted above the ringing in her ears. What just happened? The hooded man kept his eyes on the officer. A warning. The officer's twisted grin returned through the blood on his face. No, not a warning. A cleanup. Alicia's stomach dropped. Cleanup. That meant them. Whoever they weren't coming to scare. They were coming to erase. Suddenly, the hallway outside lit up with red and blue flashes. Dozens of shadows moved in unison, heavy boots pounding closer. Armed men, not police, stormed in with rifles raised, their masks gleaming under the emergency lights. Down! Hands where we can see them, one shouted. The hooded man pulled Alisha behind him, gripping the stolen pistol tight. They're not cops, he hissed. Stay low. The officer laughed through his pain. You see? You can't fight this. These men don't answer to law. They are the law. But before the soldiers could breach, the hooded man fired at the emergency sprinklers overhead. Water gushed down in sheets, blinding the invaders for just a moment. He pulled Alisha with him, dragging her across the floor and through the smoke-filled corridor. They ran. The sound of boots and shouts thundered behind them. Alicia's chest burned with every breath, her heart hammering as if it wanted to tear through her ribs. Who are they? She shouted over the chaos. People who don't like questions, the hooded man snapped back. And you? You've asked too many. The building's back exit came into view, its frame twisted from the explosion. The hooded man kicked through the wreckage, pushing Alisha outside into the cold night. The storm still raged, rain pouring down, lightning splitting the sky in jagged streaks. The streets were empty, eerily silent compared to the chaos inside. But silence was never safety. Alisha grabbed his arm. I need answers. You knew this would happen, didn't you? The man turned, his hood slipping back just enough to reveal his face. Strong features, scar running along his jawline, eyes that carried the weight of battles long fought. I knew something was coming, he said. But I didn't expect it this soon. Alisha stared into his eyes. She didn't know his name. She didn't know his story. But she knew one thing. This man wasn't just some stranger in the shadows. He had a stake in this. A deep one. Before she could press him further, headlights cut through the rain. Black SUVs screeched to a halt at the far end of the alley. Doors flung open. More masked men poured out, their rifles raised. The hooded man cursed under his breath. They're everywhere. Alicia's voice shook, but her resolve hardened. Then we fight. He glanced at her, a flash of something, respect, maybe admiration, in his eyes. You've got guts. But guts won't keep you alive. He handed her a small, metallic object from his pocket. A flash drive, cold and wet in her palm. What is this? She asked, gripping it tight. The reason they're here, he said, locking eyes with her. The reason your life just changed forever. The men advanced. Rain battered the pavement. The alley became a trap, their escape cut off. The hooded man raised the stolen gun. Alisha clenched the flash drive, her mind spinning. She didn't know what secrets it held, but she knew this much. Her name was written in it now. The masked leader shouted. Hand it over. Now! Alisha shouted back through the storm, her voice louder than she'd ever thought possible. You'll have to kill me first. The men charged. Bullets ripped through the night. Sparks flew as metal clashed, glass shattered, and the alley erupted into chaos. And just when Alisha thought she'd seen the worst, when the hooded man grabbed her hand to pull her through the carnage, another explosion tore through the street, throwing them both into the air. The last thing she saw before her vision blurred was the flash drive tumbling from her fingers into the floodwater, swallowed by the storm. The flash drive, the key to everything, is gone. Did it survive the blast? Will they find it before their enemies do? Or has the truth been washed away forever? Alisha's body slammed against the soaked pavement, the blast ringing in her bones. She gasped, blinking through the rain and smoke, her lungs screaming for air. The world spun. Shadows twisted, water splashed, boots thundered closer. Alisha! The hooded man's voice broke through the chaos. He staggered toward her, blood running down the side of his face. He grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet. We have to move. Her eyes darted frantically. The drive, it's gone. I dropped it. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the flood rushing down the gutter. The flash drive glimmered once before vanishing into the torrent, carried away into the dark unknown. The masked men closed in, rifles raised, their leader barking orders. End this. Now! Time seemed to freeze. Alisha's mind raced. The answers she craved, the secrets tied to her, to the hooded man, to the officer, were all on that drive. If it was lost forever, then everything they had fought for was gone. But then, against all odds, fate twisted. A small figure darted from the shadows. A homeless boy, drenched from the rain, bent down and scooped something from the rushing gutter. He lifted it high, the flash drive, staring at it like it was a treasure from another world. The boy looked toward Alisha, then at the masked men. In that moment, the choice was his. The leader raised his gun. Take him out. No! Alisha screamed, sprinting forward without thinking. Bullets cracked through the storm. She dove, wrapping her arms around the boy, shielding him with her body. Pain seared across her shoulder as a round grazed her, but she held on, clutching him close. It's okay, you're safe. The hooded man moved like fire. In one motion, he disarmed the nearest soldier, spun the rifle around, and unleashed a storm of return fire. Chaos erupted, screams echoing, smoke choking the alley. Go, Alisha, he roared. Run. She clutched the boy's hand, the flash drive gripped tight in her other fist, and sprinted through the downpour. Every muscle in her body screamed, but she didn't stop. Not when the alley collapsed behind her. Not when the masked men fell one by one. Not even when she heard the hooded man cry out, swallowed by the noise of gunfire. They broke free into the open street. Sirens wailed in the distance, real ones this time. Blue and red lights flickered closer. Reinforcements. Alisha stumbled to her knees, rain plastering her hair to her face, the boy still trembling in her arms. She lifted the flash drive skyward, gripping it like her life depended on it. And maybe it did, because in that tiny piece of metal was more than secrets. It was power. It was truth. It was the future. As the sirens neared, she whispered, half to herself, half to the boy. We're not done. Not even close. Her eyes burned with something new. Not just fear, not just anger. It was purpose. For the first time, she knew she wasn't just caught in the storm. She was the storm. The screen would fade to black there, leaving the audience stunned, their hearts pounding, desperate to know what happens next. If you were on the edge of your seat during this story, then don't leave just yet. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were in Alisha's place? Would you risk everything to protect the truth? And if this story gripped you, don't forget to like this video. It tells me you want more stories just like it. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the next chapter? Trust me, it's going to be even more shocking than this one.